the call with us. We just wanted to, for this very first SLA Canada virtual webinar, thank you again very much, Jane Dysart, because this was indeed her brainchild. And thank you to Dysart and Jones for sponsoring, being the first sponsor of the SLA Canada chapter or community by providing us with this Zoom platform that we're reaching you on. Our goal this year is just to establish ourselves as a new community, and I think we're off to a flying start. We have a vast board and other volunteers who are working with us to move the community forward. And really our goals for this year are focused on education, networking, and leadership. So with events like this, we're providing you with the kind of education I think that our membership is looking for, not only focused on library-specific issues, but also issues that I think for any information professional in any position in their lives, we're looking to issues like cybersecurity and collaboration, because I'm sure we'll convince Brian to talk about a lot of different things. Leadership development, again, with our board of directors, we have a lot of new faces at the table, including some of the people on this call. Tom, who works with me at the Michener Institute, is our new partner relations person. Patricia Sia, I convinced her to be our president-elect. She's not new, but she's, we need some old faces too. Jane Dysart is on our board. Bronwyn is a past president of Western Canada. Kira is a past board member from Eastern Canada. Therese is our programming person for the Toronto network. And I hope I haven't, Catherine Lavallee-Welch, of course, doesn't sit actually on our board. Of course, she's president-elect of the SLA headquarters organization. And of course, Jim, as our programming person from Ottawa, because I think there's a great opportunity here for the in-person programming not to be wedded only to where the locations of the chapters were previously located, but anybody who has a concentration of special librarians who are interested in getting together. And finally, on networking, yes, just reinforcing that network across Canada. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Jane, was there anything else you thought I should say?
Just the fact that I had an earlier communication today with Amy Burke, Executive Director of SLA, and Michael Communications, whatever he is, to say that yes, in the mishmash of things, that we should have our SLA Canada Connect by the end of next week, which means that the three that have merged will now actually have a presence together. So fingers crossed that will happen, which will make communication a little bit easier. We've been doing a bunch of workarounds, and the other thing that I would like to say is I'm starting to use the hashtag SLA CAN, C-A-N. So hopefully we can start some communications over Twitter as well about some of the things that that we're doing. But Dysart and Jones is really happy to be able to host this first event. We look forward to future ones. We already know that next month we're trying to do these the last Thursday of the month, although I think there's one in there that isn't quite, but anyway, last Thursdays of the month, hopefully. And next month we're hosting Gary Price, who is one of the search area's main brains, shall we say, and so we'll get some of his tips and tricks and latest stuff. So we look forward to that. But I want to just introduce our speaker today, Brian Pichman. Brian has worked in libraries, is currently IT support for a large consortium of universities. He has his own Evolve project group, which is the incredibly creative side where he gets to play with toys. He looks at the Consumer Electronics Show, the toy show, the whatever, and he is an advocate for libraries testing a lot of this stuff. When he talks to software companies, they say, what? Libraries could test this with their groups? And he's worked with me through Information Today to be our games and gadgets guy, main guy, and always brings new and interesting stuff to the fore. He knows a fair amount about just about everything IT, I think, but he's going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity today. We're going to then break for just a little bit. Then we're going to break for some comments, questions, whatever. And then we might talk a little bit more about collaborative tools, since today's communities are turning virtual. So turning over to you, Brian. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Very excited. Let me share my PowerPoint because, you know, everyone loves slides. Here we are. So today I'm going to talk about cybersecurity. I'm going to talk a little bit about like anonymity, so how to stay, you know, kind of private online. Seeing that we're going to probably be on the internet a lot more in the next coming of months, it's probably good to instill some best practices. So I'll talk a little bit about those. And then, as Jane mentioned, when we have time at the end, I'll talk about my 3 favorite collaboration tools, so we can dig into that. So the first point is, when we talk about anonymity or being invisible online, there's a few reasons why people like to do that. Namely, it's to hide where they're geographically located. So I don't know if you knew this, but every time you hit a website, I could probably pull that up and show you. There's a map that depending on the software you're using, you can see where people are accessing your website from at any given point at any given time, which means everyone uses these tools. And so some people don't like that. So being able to be invisible online will allow you to prevent some of that web tracking, gets rid of your digital footprint, and you can also bypass any bans or blacklisting of IP addresses. So the most common tool that people use to be anonymous online or slightly more secure online is a Tor browser. And all that is, it's a web browser like you would see with Chrome, Firefox, Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, Safari. Just another browser that enables you to have a little bit more privacy. And the way it'll work is, when you open up the browser and you ask for a website, it's going to ask a nearby server, hey, this person needs to get from point A to point B to point C, but it only knows about point A and point B, and doesn't know about point C until it gets there. And so the idea is that through all these relays, it's really hard to track where I'm coming from and what I'm actually trying to access, because if there was someone sniffing on the network, it'll only see where my current destination is going to be from relay to relay. And so I always get asked, well, how do I hide my 800-pound gorilla? You know, how do I stay a little bit more secure with what I do? And so, especially in today's world, while we're working remote, we're probably going to be accessing private information or files and data. The best thing to do is encrypt that data through a VPN. Some VPNs can also anonymize your browser history, your searches as well. So not only do you get encryption as you do your normal web surfing, it'll also hide your location and who you are. I always tell people that if you're using this as a tool to, you know, be private, don't open up your bank account on it, and don't open up Facebook and whatnot, because then obviously if someone was sniffing and they figured it out, well, Brian's using a VPN today, and because we know it's Brian because he opened up Facebook. So people utilize VPNs for privacy, but also there's a lot of good security tools on it as well, because again, it encrypts your data and what you're accessing and what you're viewing. There's a whole bunch of options that are out there. If you are looking for more privacy, some actually, like all US-based VPN companies are required by law to log your history. So then again, defeats the purpose of using a tool if you're trying to be private. So just read the reviews to find out if there's any logging that they do, if you wanted that anonymity. So to compare the two, Tor and VPN, Tor basically anonymizes you, and VPN keeps you protected in terms of encryption and data. When we talk about free Wi-Fi, it's always good to know that it's very easy to sniff and snoop on people connecting to open Wi-Fi networks. any public Wi-Fi network, there's a tool called Wireshark, for instance, that you can run on a laptop. It's a free program. It's like a click to install, and here's what you do with what you want to accomplish. You can monitor people's emails on an open, unencrypted Wi-Fi network. If someone has an FTP account, so not an S in front of it, you can see what they're typing in for their password. Sometimes people set up network shares as an FTP account, so then people can see your network logins as you're plugging away at a Starbucks, thinking you're going to be safe. But like I have a master's in information security, and my thesis was I did two. I did one where I wrote a security plan for my library, and then I also did a snooping test at public Wi-Fi locations, including a library and a Starbucks, where I logged what people did for a given day. And it was, obviously I scrubbed their names out of the data, but it was really kind of frightening about the amount of people that utilize free Wi-Fi and do work-related things without an encryption. So if you were to use free Wi-Fi, use a VPN to at least encrypt that traffic and data, so you're a little bit more anonymized and secure. The other thing to keep in mind too is if you are using public Wi-Fi and you're worried about them knowing you were there, I always tell people to change their computer names or their phone names. So if you look at your iPhone, for instance, it probably says your name's iPhone. So anyone can find out, hey, Brian's at a coffee shop because I see Brian's iPhone. If that made you uncomfortable, I would encourage you to change it. So my iPhone is a series of random letters. I just thumbed really fast on my keyboard. So now if that address appears anywhere in the world, no one knows who it is and who it belongs to. It's very random. So in general, best tips and practices, if you are trying to be, secure, anonymized, that type of thing, I always tell people to go buy a computer from a garage sale and use that. And then when you're done, throw it away and pay in cash. And then no one knows, I shouldn't say no one, but the capability of them figuring out who used it and who did what is minimized. If you are using public Wi-Fi, don't make purchases with a credit card, because not all websites are set up securely. You might not notice it, but inside of a browser, there's a little top left, there's usually a green lock that says secure. That usually indicates that the site's safe to put in private information. But even still, nothing's ever 100% safe. So if you are on a public Wi-Fi, I always tell people to avoid making purchases with credit cards. And then if you're using like private VPN tools or whatnot to encrypt or anonymize yourself, don't sign in with personal type of accounts, because then it defeats the purpose. A couple other tricks. How many of us have ever went to a website that you weren't sure, but you want to try out the trial, but you didn't want to sign up for and get spammed? I use 10-minute mail quite frequently. So what 10-minute mail does is it creates an email address that has an inbox that you can log into, and it lasts 10 minutes. And so if you were to sign up for an account for somewhere that you weren't confident, or you wanted the unlimited free trial type runs without having to make new emails, you know how like Netflix gives you a free week of Netflix for signing up? You can make multiple 10-minute emails every week and re-sign up for your Netflix service and cancel it. But anyway, so 10-minute mail gives you an inbox and it disappears after 10 minutes. You can click a button to extend that time. So let's say you were waiting for some responses or whatnot. You can do that on that website. And then cleaning your computer as well. A few tools, Doctor Cleaner or Eraser, will completely overwrite your computer. So if you were to get rid of your laptop or sell your machines, I would tell you to run one of these tools because it makes recovery a lot harder. So that's that. Other tools to keep you protected that aren't free: Identity Guard and LifeLock. They have paid services that will monitor your identity if your passwords have been compromised online, or if they're being currently sold, like any information about you is being sold on the internet. Sites to monitor when data gets breached. It's Have I Been Pwned, PWNED.com. What that tool does is it monitors your email address that you tell it to monitor. And if anytime there's a breach or your data appears on some type of data set on the dark web for purchase, they'll tell you about it and say, hey, you might want to change your passwords this is the account it was associated with. So if you use the same password, you're in for a rough time. And this is kind of like some of the messages they'll send you, or screenshots of kind of the exploits that were going on at a given time and what kind of data was compromised. The other thing to do while you're working remote, since you may not have the ability to walk over to your reference librarian and ask a question, is to know that Google isn't always your friend. Sometimes when you Google things, like if you were to Google how to download Firefox, there's a good chance that one of the first search results is not going to be the Firefox browser and some sort of virus or trick to get you to download something you don't want. So always be cautious when you're Googling. The other piece to do, especially now with everyone working remote and the concerns of people being able to sniff networks, using something with dual factor authentication helps mitigate that risk. And all that is when you sign in with an account, it'll ask you for another piece of personable identifiable information. And this will be either a text message or using an app that gives you a code. You type in the code and you log in. So in the chance that someone hacks you and knows your password and logs into, let's say, your Google account, they're going to be asked for another password that's randomized every 10 seconds. And so they won't be able to, it'll be a lot harder for them to log in unless they had your phone or a way to trick that. And then when purchasing things online, because a lot of people are probably going to get bored and want to buy things like myself, and you might stumble on websites that you're not really sure about, but there's a really good deal and it's worth the $40 risk, but it's not worth getting your credit card stolen. Use a tool like Privacycom. I gave you a link with a referral code on it. What Privacycom is, it creates a virtual credit card that can be used for that specific website, and it'll only work for that specific website. And what's even more exciting is you set thresholds. So you can say how much are they allowed to spend every month, every year, every day, or in total. And so if I sign up, so I use this when I sign up for subscription sites, because I always forget to cancel. And so I'll put a value on it, or if I sign up for a trial that says we're going to bill you automatically after 10 days if you don't cancel your 14-day trial, I'll just set this up so they have a credit card and then I disable it. And so when it comes time to extend that trial into a paid software, they can't do anything about it because my credit card's deactivated. And the other positive plug is if that website is, a hoax, or that they get hacked and all their credit card information is stolen, I don't have to go to log into all my other bank accounts or all my other shopping sites to update a credit card, because the only credit card is going to be impacted is one, and I can just delete it. And then I can get a new credit card if I need, just for that specific site. So like my wallet, I have like 40 some odd credit cards for all the different websites I use without having to actually open up credit cards. And the funding source ties directly to your bank account. A few other random tips and tricks. When people email you, only reply to people that you know, or click on links of people that you know or you have some sort of professional relationship with. Never click on links you don't know, especially if you see links like bit.ly, tinyurl, etc. within the email account, because then it's somebody trying to mask what the actual address is. And if you were curious and you're like, I think I know Rebecca Jones, but I'm not 100% sure, you can throw that link that this person gave you into snapit2.com or snapit.com, and you'll get a screenshot of whatever site is going to load when it loads. So it's a really great way to test to see if links are safe. You can also use urlvoid.com, and it will validate if a link is safe or not. And these are 100% free tools, and I use them quite frequently because I get a lot of messages and I'm terrible with names. So I'll be like, I don't know if this is legit. I'll copy and paste the link in there. And if I see it says not safe, I go, okay, I'll delete this. It's the easier way to test something than clicking and realizing your mistake later. In terms of passwords, don't use the same passwords for everything, because it's really so if I was a hacker, what I would do is, as soon as I found out, Jane's password to her email or her MySpace account, I'll go, I wonder if Jane uses this password for Facebook. And if Jane does use the same password for everything, I now can get into her Facebook. I'll try it on her Gmail account. I'll try it on her Walmart, Amazon account, Best Buy, and get myself an Oculus Quest. And so that's why people say don't use the same password, because if your password gets compromised, every single hacker knows to reuse that password across all the popular websites to see what works. And the best thing is about hackers is they don't act on the data right away. So you may have been hacked like 2 years ago. And that's why people say change your passwords frequently. Because let's say tomorrow Amazon gets hacked. Hackers are smart enough to know not to test those passwords out just yet, because it's going to bring too much awareness. So they'll sit on that data for a year, maybe 2 years, and then try all the passwords. So at that point, no one's going to know what's going on, and they're not going to be paying as close attention to their Amazon purchases, if you will. But everyone's susceptible to being hacked. I actually got hacked once pretty good. So they got my website and then tried all my social media accounts, including all my shopping accounts, because I have dual factor authentication set for most things. So I was getting messages like, hey, you're trying to sign into Walmart in Korea. I was like, nope, that's not me. And it all happened because I had a viral tweet that Amazon retweeted, and I had over 1 million views on my website within like 12 hours, which then obviously made me somewhat important, I guess, in the hacker community. So they're like, let's go see what Brian's worth. And they saw my bank account and gave up. So everyone's worth being hacked, regardless of who you are. If you have antivirus software, it doesn't matter. Just use it. I think I'm doing pretty good on time. I'm trying to speed through a couple things. Understanding breaches and hacks. There's a difference between the two. A hack is when someone gains authorized access into a computer network. So usually it's a social engineering type of hack. So I'll call in Amazon, let's say, and say, hey, my name is Rebecca, and I forgot my password. Can you help me out? And they'll be like, well, Rebecca, what did you buy last? And I'll be like, oh, toilet paper probably. And they'll be like, yeah, that matches up. And then they'll try to help me reset the password. So it's really easy to do social engineering type tactics. And so on the other end, as you as a person, if you get a call from the taxing body or even Amazon or Microsoft even saying, hey, we noticed a problem with your computer, those things don't really happen. Microsoft's never going to call you to fix your computer. They don't care. They know you'll just spend more money and buy a new one. So always be hesitant. If you are concerned, like if your credit card company calls you and says, hey, you've been hacked, we're going to fix it. Can you give us your social really fast? That won't happen. But those are the social engineering tactics. People are in a panic and yeah, here's my social, fix whatever you need to fix. And now with the whole coronavirus, people are really upscaling the type of threats and basing it off another threat. Because now I'll show you this screenshot. So I gave a website that's kind of keeping track of all the latest and greatest email threats where people are trying to pose as the Ministry of Health, some health department. Hey, your family member is in the hospital for corona. Please click this link to see if you interacted with them. And unfortunately, it's malicious times. And so just be more cautious of the emails you're getting, especially if it relates to some sort of national emergency. And the other piece that I always like to use, so if you're using your Google account for a lot of things like myself, there's a way to where you can check your connected devices. If you go to your account and then click on the security tab, you'll see these options of all the connected devices that you have and when you connected to them last. As well as if you ever went to a website that says sign in with Google, you can see all the accounts that have ever been associated with it as well. So then if you notice a website that, I don't think I've ever signed into that app, you click remove. Or you go, I don't own an iPad, you would click on it and hit remove. And this will help kind of prevent some of those dangers. And that's it. Are there any questions on like general IT security things you want to talk about? I will stop sharing for a moment.
Wow, I'm looking here. You are welcome to raise your hand, and I will take you off mute, and you can comment, ask a question. Brian, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I think I'm really secure. I use Trend Micro on everything. I never, I very rarely use public Wi-Fi, and I'm thinking, oh my God, do I have some work to do? And how do you keep track of these sites that you're recommending to us?
I've stumbled upon them over the years, and I just keep that as my curated list of best tips and practices.
Wow.
And then back in my college days, and I can say it was for school, I would like to, annoy my neighbors, and I would set up sites or whatnot to, test what I've learned in class. So everything from setting up a free Wi-Fi network that says don't connect to this Wi-Fi network was the name of it. And we invited our roommates, or our neighbors rather, not roommates, to see if they would connect to it. And we set up fake Facebook websites. So they would type in facebook.com, and what's actually happening is they're going to a server we have that looks like Facebook, smells like Facebook. And when they type in the password, it logs into a text file and then pushes them to Facebook. So at the end of the day, they never knew they typed in the password. And then they would log into gave me their username and password to stuff. So yeah, there's all sorts of really simple, and these are all free tools that you can download. That was from a tool called Backtrack, or now it's called Kali Linux. And it's called DNS spoofing. There's like, you click DNS and then spoofing, and then you type in what you want to do, and it takes care of all of it for you. So the availability of tools is easily accessible. And then for people at home too, with wireless networks, there's an app. So Kali Linux can also hack a wireless network. It'll keep guessing passwords until it gets in. That's why it's suggested to make very long and complicated types of passwords for that. And there's another tool called Kane Enable that does a brute force attack on trying to log into a wireless network. And these are all freely, Kane Enable is harder to find, but these are all, for the most part, available on the internet that you can download, install with little to no technical expertise, and then it's just button clicks at that point.
Okay. Jeez, I guess it's time to change our Wi-Fi password. So Richard Hulser, where are you here? I'm unmuting you. Hi, Richard.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Of course, my brain isn't 100% functioning these days anymore because there's so much data coming at you. Brian, did you cover, I got an alert from Google actually, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, where it said, gee, you should do a password checkup. And I did that just to see what it would do. And it gave me a list of all the different accounts that A, it was tracking, which was interesting. B, where, you know, I had forgotten because one was an old one or something where I had the same password, or that it says consider changing your password because it's at risk for this reason or that reason. Are you familiar with that? What's your opinion?
I haven't used the password checker, but that's cool. So I use a combination. I like Google a lot, and I might trust what they do. I know that everything I do for them, they use my data to make profit, and I'm cool with that. And so I use Google to save my passwords because then it'll bounce between each browser. And then I also use, for anything that's a little bit more private, I use LastPass to store all my passwords.
Right.
And LastPass has a similar tool that will tell you if you're using the same password for more than one website, or if your passwords are too easy to guess.
Right.
So I have a related question because, you know, there are some tools out there that says, hey, you know, you don't have to remember all your passwords. We'll manage it for you, right? And so, but I'm really concerned about using a tool that potentially would have all my passwords. So tell me that there's something that I could use like that, because, you know, I have like a thick spreadsheet that I've kept offline that has so many passwords, because who the hell can remember if you're really doing the right job of different things, you know, different passwords for all the different things you do.
So I've taken two approaches. So one, like for LastPass, the way those passwords are saved, it's saved as like a hash value on your computer. And so the only way to, so like you can't, so LastPass protects themselves in the sense of, in order for, if they ever get hacked, the hackers aren't going to be able to get your list of passwords because it'll need that hash value that's stored on your desktop, which will be different than the laptop you use in the other room. And so that's how they kind of separate that data and protect it. In terms of remembering passwords, so I actually remember all my passwords, and they're all different. And the way I do it is I have one very long, complicated-ish string of letters and numbers. And then the very last letter is, or last one or two letters, is the name of the website. So Facebook, I have my complicated password, and then FA. For my bank account, which is Chase, I do CA, or CH, sorry. For LinkedIn, LI, so on and so forth. And so hackers aren't going to think that way. They're not going to, if they're going to get a dump of passwords, they're not going to go look at the last two letters and see. They're going to just use a script to power through all of them. And so that's how I do it. It's easier that way.
Well, that was worth the price of admission right there.
Right. Very interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I have Stephen. So thank you, Richard, for getting us started here. And now I'm going to Stephen Abram. I got you here, Stephen. There we go. And he's got his hand up too, lower hand. And I just lost Stephen. There he goes. Unmute. Stephen.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Hey, good. Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm just not putting my video on. But I'm seeing all sorts of warnings about Android and iPhone apps that parents are downloading for their kids during the lockdown. And they're bad. They do bad things. And it's similar to that Russian app where everybody was aging their face and it was collecting data like crazy and no one knew it was a malicious app. What kind of advice should I be asking public libraries to give to the parents about their kids going crazy, downloading all sorts of new apps that are opportunistically doing bad things?
I guess that's a tough one. There's two ways to kind of go around it. Every time you download an app, either Android or Apple, it'll tell you by downloading this app, you're going to give this, and this, or you're going to give access to this, and that. And so things to kind of look out for is like if you're downloading a game that all of a sudden says, hey, we need access to your contacts, it's probably not the best to install it, because why do you need my contacts if I'm playing a game? And some of it's for legitimate like marketing reasons, but those are some of the things you can look at to see what kind of access they need and why do they need it. When they ask for like geolocation, again, it's usually for marketing, but you can turn that off per app, and that helps kind of mitigate some of that risk. For most of the apps that we'll see that are more malicious in nature will be created recently. So look at like you can hit like the review tab on, I don't know what it looks like on Android, but on an iPhone, there's like version history and see when it was created last. And it was created, years ago with a lot of reviews. It's probably going to be safer than an app that was created yesterday with 10,000 reviews. That's not possible. There's some type of script that probably went through to make up all these fake reviews, and it seems unlikely that would occur. So I guess it would be a combination of those two, is seeing what they need access to and why when you go to download the app, and then two, like how long has it been out in the wild, and then if it's been only around for a couple of days, then I would wait. There's other apps out there.
Wow. Tommy, or Tom, sorry, Tom. I do work with a colleague whose name is Tommy, and I saw Tom BL, and I translated that. I'm terribly sorry.
No worries. It's happened before. It's okay. Yes, lovely to meet everyone. Just a quick question from a best practices standpoint. I often tell my friends not to use their Visa-enabled debit cards online and to use their credit cards instead. Maybe I should turn on my camera here. Hi. Simply because you should not be saving your credit card information on company websites in case the company website is compromised in some way. And I'm just wondering what your opinion is on this advice and whether or not I've been woefully misleading my friends and ruining their lives.
No, so for me, like I store but I use that privacy app for most of my online purchases, and I use that. So if I really want to buy something and use my credit card, I'll use that option. But ideally I'll try to use PayPal first, because PayPal will back my purchases. They have that buyer and seller protection on it for almost all your purchases too. So if you bought something and never arrived, you can dispute that with PayPal, and PayPal will refund your money for you. And so I guess your options would be like use PayPal if it's available, and if it's not, I use Privacy. So then my actual bank account will also ensure things that I pay with, because it'll be like a debit transaction for the most part. It ensures that too. And so I use that as my checks and balances. Because to your example, if a website gets hacked, then all those credit card information will be hacked as well, or potentially hacked, and I don't want that. And then if I use my credit card for other services, then I have to go and update everything. So privacy is my risk mitigation. Worst case scenario, one account gets hacked, and if I put the limits in place too, because you can put thresholds of how much you can spend per year, per month, etc. I have my threshold set, so I can't get charged thousands of dollars because I said, hey, I'm only going to spend $20 a month on said service. So worst case, even if I can't get my money back, I'm only out $20 versus a lot more.
Right. Wow. Thank you so much, Brian. And I know like we have about 15 minutes left, and I will keep watching for questions. And Stephen, I'm sorry I didn't see your hand. I was so engrossed in this. And but I do also know, Brian, that you wanted to share some of the best collaborative tools that we should be looking at and working with our clients, both internal and external to our organizations.
Yeah, let me flip back to my PowerPoint. I'll just cover my 3 favorite apps that I use for my own business. So I use a tool called Slack. It's basically fast online collaboration. It's 1,000 times better than email, and you can categorize conversations. So if you're working in a team environment, or if you want to build integrations, it's phenomenal. I'll show you what I mean. Free conference call. You get free conference call bridges. The downside is that everyone is using it now, so the lines are sometimes overloaded. So just keeping that in mind. They're doing a really good job with communication now, explaining, hey, here's what we're going to do because we know the increase is happening and we're investing money to make this better. And then a tool called Big Blue Button. It's a WebEx style meeting and screen sharing tool, and I'll show you that as well. So here's Slack. The first thing out of the gates for Slack is there's a lot of integrations you can connect with. And so I have integrations that connect to, I have an invoicing system. And so every time someone pays an invoice or requests something, it's all logged into a Slack channel. And then with the integrations, so you can do APIs, email integrations, so you can forward things over, and when it hits Slack, you can transpose that data into there. And I'll actually live show you what my version of Slack looks like. The other cool thing with Slack is, let's say you're a company and you have outside people working together. You can create guest accounts and you can give them specific access to a specific folder or a specific channel that they can communicate and collaborate with. Yeah. And then other things you can do with Slack, just as at a high level, you can set up notifications based on departments. You can have alerts going to a channel. So in my environment where we support 50 colleges and universities, we have a channel called Alerts. And every time a server goes down or whatnot, it's pinged into that channel. And all my team members know to monitor that channel to make sure nothing is wrong. And if something is on that channel, to act on it. And you can even go something as crazy as, book request at yourlibraryname.com. And anytime someone emails that, you can have Slack show that notification for you. So since we're all working remote now, it'll be very hard for people to, hey, did you grab this yet? At least now you can see that conversation unfold on Slack.
Right. We do.
Big Blue Button. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, Brian. We have a question here about how does Slack compare to Skype?
So Skype is you can't create channels, and you can't do API. I think you can't do any APIs with Skype where you can pull in data from other sources and interact with that data. Skype is just a communication tool. Teams would be similar to Slack. I use Teams and Slack, and to be honest, Slack is millions of miles ahead of Teams still in the amount of integrations that are available and things you can connect with. Teams is very limited.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add in, we have another comment from Stephen about some advice for the web calls and teleconferences using some of these, like the free conference calls, is don't start your call on the hour or half hour when they are most clogged.
Yeah, that's a good point. Start them at the 15-minute after, and it'll be easier. So Big Blue Button, I'll do live demos really fast, but Big Blue Button is a tool that lets you communicate, kind of like what we're doing on Zoom, where you can share a screen. I'm almost done setting up an instance that'll be free for anyone that wants to use it for Big Blue Button with no data caps. On the website, it'll be libchalklearning.com. And then Free Conference Call. Free Conference Call is the tool that lets you create a conference bridge, as well as do screen sharing if you wanted as well, but I believe it's limited to 30 minutes, the screen sharing portion. But I've used Free Conference Call before they were clean and neat. It used to be very difficult to use,
yes.
But it worked and I liked it. And so and in today's age now, it's like smooth and streamlined, and it works phenomenally. So I will stop sharing and flip over to my browser.
I have not been able to get onto Big Blue Button yet. It's so busy.
Yeah, so that's why I built my own.
Oh,
Sure. So here's what Big Blue Button looks like. On the left is where you can see your people that are joining. If there's any notes that you want to share, chat. Can I do annotations? Cool. 1 second.
Because Big Blue Button is originally, for those that haven't experienced it, it's originally for a teaching learning management system, but it really is a teaching tool.
Yes. And so yeah, it was originally designed as like a WebEx style thing. And then in the middle here, or on the far right rather, is where you have your screen. So if you can load up a PowerPoint, and everyone that's watching the PowerPoint can join in, or you can share your desktop on it. And it works through HTML5. So there's no software you have to download. You can also view it on your cell phone. There's less browser restrictions because there's no software required to run it. It's just a 100% web-based tool.
Right.
And then Slack.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm flipping between apps here. Share. Cool. So here's my Slack. You should see it, I believe. So in Slack, it's people are able to, you can create conversations. You can also call out to other users. And then they will get a message or an alert on their device. What's really cool is, like for social media, for instance, I don't have time to monitor all my social media handles. So every time someone tweets or posts on LinkedIn, Rebecca's been very busy. All that information is piped over. And what I kind of think is cool, if someone ever tweets something by mistake, it's captured forever on my Slack channel. So if they delete it and I'm tagged on it, I get to keep it, image and all. So just keep that in mind, Rebecca, as you tweet.
Great.
I'm gonna just flag you so all your tweets will be logged forever. What else here? So people post tickets. I have a ticketing system that kind of pipes into it. Yeah, that's Slack, and it's really easy to add other integrations and apps. I literally just click in Add App. Smooch is really cool. It has a weird name, but what it does is you would integrate Smooch with your Facebook or any other messaging service you or your library might use, and when somebody messages it, it will actually create a channel in Slack, and you can have that conversation in Slack while they're on Facebook, and no one knows. And so it's a really simple way to kind of monitor all your threads and all your communication channels through one single repository.
Okay. Is it any safer than Facebook Messenger?
Another thing was about the same amount. What do you mean, like in terms of people taking your conversations?
Yeah.
No, at the end of the day, it's still going to use Facebook Messenger. This is just an integration to send data to Facebook Messenger.
Okay, great.
And what's nice about Slack is, so I have different Slack channels for different companies I'm working with, and I can tab between all of these different companies very easily. And then each company has their own subset of channels and conversations that I can flag into and interact with. These things on the left are called your channels, so they're like your work buckets. So I have leads, partnerships, orders, social media, and that kind of thing on this layout.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. Fantastic. Wow. And so we welcome Kevin Adams, and just to, for some fun, I'd like everybody to put their video on for our last few minutes so we can see each other, because this is about connecting. There we go. Great. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I certainly hope, I'm going to ask you in the chat during the last few minutes to just put one thing you've learned in the last hour that you didn't know that's going to be helpful for you. And any questions, and Jane, you can even ask Brian a question. Any questions for Brian? Any comments for him? I just want to keep sending him food and water so he can track this stuff for us, keep us
You
current.
got it.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. And I was just about to write on the note that I need to get my social media all together, integrated on Slack. And I'll be talking to you further, Brian.
That's fine. That's perfect.
Stephen says, be afraid, be very afraid. I know. What suddenly occurred to me is we must change our Wi-Fi password for this house. Honest to God. Everything else has huge passwords, but not our Wi-Fi.
Yeah, start with that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. But every time, Brian, you scare the hell out of me of like, oh my God, the implications of everything going on.
But also these very
Not bad.
simple tools.
Yeah. And I'm trying to say, okay, he just said 7 different tools. I need to know all of them. I can't remember, or, I don't have time to kind of get into all of that. So, and I know I've had people who worked for me in my old job who used Slack, and it was such amorphous. Now I get it, so thank you for that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Slack is just a better organized email system.
Right.
And then you can it's really easy to have conversations within Slack too. So you can click on this little chat bubble, and that could be tied to whatever was posted in the main header. Kind of like how in Outlook, how it folds common messages together. Slack can do that too.
Exactly.
So two key things, Brian. One is, all these stupid gamey things that people have on Facebook, and you mentioned about it turned out to be a Russian thing, the thing with the faces. So I don't participate in any of those surveys or anything else, because to me, every one of them, it's probably a soft way to get into you being oh, this is a nice tool or something, and then later the Russians or Chinese or whoever, the guy in Utah or something, I don't know, is going to nail you. So I don't participate in any of that, and I'm trying to get people not to do that anymore. You've kind of validated that, and then I forgot my other one, but go ahead.
No,
anyway,
perfect.
Thanks for all this. Yeah, this is good.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Just to follow up with Richard's, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Stephen, with Richard's comment, this will be posted both as a webinar and as a podcast on Dysart Jones.
Good.
Okay, and I will make sure that link is loud and clear on SLA, because we.
Thanks for that. I need to go back and listen to this in more detail.
Excellent. And we also opened this right up for all information professionals. It's our way of marketing that SLA is alive and kicking, and especially in Canada, it is a viable networking and connection and professional development tool for anyone in the information domain. And so we're going to keep supporting that, and please invite people. They don't have to be members, they just have to be interested.
And so, Brian, you're too young for this, but I'll remind everyone that one of the earliest websites was called the Big Blue Button that does absolutely nothing. And you just kept pressing it and nothing happened. And it was an interesting first step in web design stuff. No matter how big you made the button, it never did anything. But I did want to say something you didn't mention today that I learned from you in the past, is we see people posting all the time, if you love your daughter, if you love your cousins, share this. And I hadn't realized that those were the ability of people to, as soon as you shared them all, they created validated lists, and then you could go on eBay and buy those lists to hack people. So I've told all sorts of friends, don't share that crap, that it's a scam to create a group list of validated emails or contact lists.
Yep, exactly.
Right, exactly. Okay, seeing no further questions, and because we like podcasts,
Someone did have do I have to be more careful when I use my work VPN and do personal stuff?
Oh,
I guess that kind of is up to your employer. So if your employer cares about what you do in your free time, then maybe it don't matter. But if they assume that you're supposed to be working the whole time while on the VPN, that's all trackable. Because if you're using a company VPN, so they could have logging turned on, and they can see that, hey, Brian's been on Facebook for 12 hours during his work shift. Shame on him. But
yeah,
I know
but
that
a lot
there's
of
other
organizations do care. My former employer, the museum, they keep all that information for 3 years after it exists, and they do some kind of assessment sometimes. And I'm sure some of the bigger firms. So what I've always done in all my years of migrating through this from an IBM era to today is try to keep as much as I can separate. Like I try not to do. When I was in a big organization, I tried never to do any of my personal stuff on that, just because. Because they can use every single thing that they own that in their minds, and they will use. If you have personal emailing transactions, they'll have that. And if you're saying, gee, I'm really hating my manager today, to use an example, they'll use that in some future for, I mean, if you have a lot of employees, it would be kind of tough for them to be looking at everything, but it's just something to keep in mind. That's all.
And I'll also remind everyone that when you're using VPN and they're storing it, that is legally discoverable and able to be put into court.
Yeah,
So,
that's the next step. Yes.
And so they
Freedom
can
of information.
obtain it and get it if libel or slander at our level, but on things like acquisitions and mergers and all that sort of stuff, it can be a real challenge, or how well you handled a COVID crisis. So we haven't hit the number of lawsuits that are going to come out of this, but be careful out there.
And one of the other things that we used to do, we used to be done for us, and I suspect it still is, but I don't receive any emails from my organization saying, hey, by the way, you're one of the top 10 users of the internet in the organization anymore, because we've actually expanded our bandwidth considerably at work. But I used to get a list of sites that I'd visited and things that had happened in it. And one of the problems with that is, of course, is that with a lot of sites these days, you have things like embedded videos and embedded this, that, and the next thing. And of course, I could point to it and say, well, I went to there, but the problem is that I have no idea what's in it in terms of how it's actually used. So the bandwidth would expand incredibly because of things like, embedded videos. But you kind of have to be careful from that perspective, because, organizations have they can look at what you've looked at. And I mean, hopefully most of the time we're all being, good citizens and looking at only stuff that, we should do. But the problem is that sometimes you just never know what is included in a site and or where that information is going. So that's something also to remember, even in this day where, people hopefully are not using the stuff, but it's something that kind of was brought home to me, as I said, when I started getting those. And I just said, well, I can't control what a website has, because literally, they're embedding things that sometimes you don't even know about. And like newspaper websites will have videos where you can't switch them off. So that sort of thing is also something to remember, even in this day and age.
That's great. Thanks.
Just to add to what Stephen had said about court, if you work for a government organization, all that information is also still under the Access to Information Act, so it can actually be accessed as well. So we had logs of different sites politicians had been looking at. Some you might not want to see, but it's all, you can request it under Access to Information. So yeah, just to be careful.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Brian, is there a tool that you showed us that can tell us what's going to be in a website before we do go to it? Just to follow up on
you can, so using the Snapit2 website, snapito.com, whatever that was. I'll post the actual URL in the chat one sec.
Thank you.
So that one you can at least get a screenshot of what the site has before it loads.
That was it. I thought you said something. Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, and now I will say thank you so much, Brian Pichman. You are an amazing, amazing young man, and we are so lucky to have you sharing your expertise and your experience with us. We hope you come back.
Thank you for having me. We'll definitely will.
Okay, great. And thanks everybody for trying out our very first hashtag SLA can. Indeed we can. Oh yeah, baby. Website and or webinar, and or we're trying to decide what to call these. So please, you know, I'll send you a little a survey about how we did, how we can improve, and if you could give us suggested names, a chat in our, I don't know, let us know. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.